Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF, and Hebrew name is Abitchonistim. IDSF is a leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security to defend Israel. It's a great pleasure to be joined today by the founder and chairman of IDSF, Brigadier General Amir Avivi. General, thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure, Moshe.
General, as always, there's a lot happening in the war right now, especially within the upper echelons of the IDF. What can you share with us?
Well, first we have a change of command. We have General Eyal Samir, who I must say is also a good friend, known each other for many years, that has been appointed to be the Chief of Staff. He comes from the Armored Forces. He commanded the Southern Command. He was deputy of the Chief of Staff and a very talented and able officer, and I'm very happy he was elected to be chief of staff. I've had multiple talks with him, and he's a guy who gets it, who knows what needs to be done, who understands that he has to bring decisive victory in this war, to appoint relevant officers who are strong, determined, winners, and also to prepare the army for future threats that are changing all the time. I remember that for a long time, the IDF was saying the era of big wars is over, especially wars against regular armies. And here now we're talking about Turkey, we're talking about Egypt, we're talking about new potential threats that we'll have to deal with. So I think General Zamir will have to first really deal with the operational issues with Gaza and how to eradicate Hamas after the hostage deal with the terror in Judea and Samaria, with stabilizing the Lebanese border, Syria, a lot of challenges, and of course preparing for a massive attack on Iran. These are the challenges.
Thank you, General. And are you able to just describe a little bit the division of responsibility between the IDF leadership, the Chief of Staff, and the government? You know, many of our listeners who have been following closely all of our briefings and have really been kind of watching these investigations into October 7th, a lot of people just aren't clear who is responsible for what. At what point does the government make security decisions, and at what point does the chief of staff have to own certain decisions?
So when it comes to special operations, when it comes to wars or big operations, you have a cabinet. The cabinet is composed of ministers and the prime minister, and they take the decisions. They vote and they decide. The cabinet is the formal entity in the government that decides on going to war, what to do, how to fight, where to fight, and so on. And the army brings the suggestions together with the Shin Bet and the Mossad. The army, the Shin Bet, the Mossad, they bring also the intelligence um, needed, and they suggest the operational path. They give options. They talk about ramifications, what might happen in different scenarios. But at the end of the day, it's the cabinet and the prime minister that leads the cabinet to really take the decisions. But they rely a lot on what the army says and what they suggest, and they usually tend to trust the army. And I think it's changed a bit. Since the 7th of October, the cabinet is more proactive, taking decisions that sometimes are not in line at all with what the army is saying. And this is how things basically work.
Now, the incoming chief of staff comes from the armored division, whereas previous chief of staffs, let's say, were more from, I guess, the elite operations forces. Is there a difference in terms of what part of the army they come from, in terms of how they will lead the military?
I definitely think that there is a difference. I think that people who grew up in special operations and didn't really command big ground forces, they tend to believe that everything is about special operations and it's all just accurate intelligence and so on. And they have, I would say, like a lack of respect to masses, to really the big army. In a sense, like big armies, it's like the 20th century. We are in the 21st century. Everything is pinpointed. It's high tech. And it's not the case. It's not the case. We see how masses are important. And usually, as General Gershon Cohen describes this, is the difference between a 100-meter runner and when you have a marathon. And in marathon, it's masses of people running. Some of them maybe do it in less than 2 hours, but many do the marathon in 4 and 5 hours. But a marathon is a powerful event, and the masses it make a difference. And armies are about masses. Yes, they have special operations and so on, but truly it's the masses that win wars. And this is something that I think General Samir, coming from the armored forces, understands very well. But obviously, we also want to have very, very good technology and Air Force and so on. But especially looking at the fact that the buildup of force will have to look at armies like Egypt and possibly Turkey, I think that it's the right guy to lead this buildup.
Thank you. One last question on the IDF leadership before we move into more operational issues in Gaza. In terms of not just the chief of staff, but the lower level leadership, higher leadership within the IDF, but just not the top position. Do you think this change will inspire, will affect those lower level positions in terms of moving the IDF forward?
A change in command in the army is dramatic. The whole atmosphere will change. Everything will change in the army once a new commander starts his position. He will bring a new culture, atmosphere, motivation. This week, immediately after he was chosen, he spoke in the Ministry of Defense. And from this first speech, you understand where things are going and the way he thinks about these things. He cited a famous psalm from Tehillim, say it in Hebrew, "Erdוף אויביי ואשיגם ולא אשוב עד כלותם." Now you translate it.
I will chase my enemies and I will reach them and I won't stop until they're defeated. I hope that was a rough translation.
לכלות אותם is more like eradicated, but yes. So I think this is exactly what we're aiming at, winning decisively against our enemies and getting the job done. And it's the right time because now, after more than a year, it seems that the current leadership has really, they failed on the 7th of October. They did what they could do to get things better, but now it's time for a new leadership in the army to lead the army to the next challenges.
Okay, so practically speaking, what do you think might change on the battlefield in this war? Let's say in Gaza right now, we're in the middle of this these phases of this ceasefire. Do you think we will see dramatic change in terms of the way the IDF will carry out, implement, or even advise the ceasefire?
I think that one crucial change, and we talked about it a lot, is the way we handle the humanitarian aid. We need to stop giving Hamas humanitarian aid. We need a complete change in the policy, in the way we deal with this. We need, at best, to get the civilians humanitarian aid, but not Hamas. And this requires a whole different approach and plan from what was done until now. Also, we need to stop raids and start conquering the area, go into an area and conquer it and stay there. We'll see how this will work out with the plans of Trump to relocate many Gazans. It's also an issue. So definitely we need new tactics and a much more decisive attack in Gaza. But again, this will depend on what will happen with the discussions regarding the second stage of the hostage deal. The second stage of the hostage deal, the demands of Israel are very clear. We want all the hostages. We want all the leadership of Hamas out of Gaza, and we want complete demilitarization of the Gaza Strip. So we have to see if Hamas agrees. It's very hard for me to see how Hamas simply agrees to surrender and that's it. Probably we'll have to fight in order to reach this really goal we want to achieve.
Thank you, General. I want to thank, of course, all of our viewers who tune in, who put in all types of questions in the chat or watch on YouTube and then send me the questions. General, a lot of people want a little bit more clarity on specifically what is happening at the Rafah crossing right now in Gaza, the border with Egypt. How much control does the IDF have over that crossing, and how critical is it to retain control there indefinitely?
Philadelphi is crucial. All the buildup of Hamas was done through Philadelphi. And Philadelphi, it's the Rafah crossing, but it's also the whole border. You can smuggle through the crossing. You can smuggle through tunnels. Most of them were destroyed. I hope all of them. You can smuggle above ground. So you really need to control the whole border. This all roughly 9 miles of border between Gaza and Egypt, and it's crucial. And I think it's going to be a big mistake to give up the border. I think that Israel is considering maybe giving it up momentarily for a certain period of time to get all the hostages. But looking overall, and certainly in the long term, we need to control this border and prevent any buildup in Gaza. You cannot demilitarize Gaza without being there. You need to be in Philadelphia to demilitarize the Gaza Strip unless there is a complete end-to-end change in the reality inside Gaza and they stop their motivation to build up terror infrastructure.
And what happens when there's a temporary release, from Philadelphia, from the Rafah crossing? Is there just an endless amount of supplies and people traveling both ways, and the IDF has lost months and months of progress? I mean, how bad is that, even for temporary not having control?
No, it's bad. It's bad because they renew command and control. They improvise explosive devices. They have time to train. But again, we're talking about not a very, very long period of time. The first stage, 42 days. You don't build yourself from scratch in 42 days. Okay? We have to take it in proportions and understand that at the end of the day, Hamas cannot bring anything into Gaza, talking about terror infrastructure and so on. They do get humanitarian aid. So the buildup will be at a certain extent, but the IDF is preparing very serious plans to degrade them very, very fast and deal with this. And we have to remember that we're getting a lot of capabilities. We are rebuilding our Air Force, getting munitions, training, getting prepared. Not only they are a bit organizing, we are getting ready and we'll do it with new leadership. So this is what's happening.
So obviously the goal in Gaza is to defeat Hamas as a military governmental agency, return the hostages. But getting to that point, I mean, are there any red lines in all of these negotiations? Are there any things that Israel can or will do that you would say that is a red line, we can never pass that, and Abitchonistim IDSF will push against that with all of our might? Or these are all gray lines, gray areas, and everything can be as bad but can be undone?
I think that one real red or two red lines is uh, stopping the war, not achieving the goals of war, not eradicating Hamas, and not creating the terms that never again there will be a terror army. So we have two challenges overall, looking at all this war, okay, on all fronts. We need to win the war, and then we need to make sure that we keep what we managed for the long term. If we win the war, let's say we won, great win, and then we find ourselves in 5 years needing to fight again, going to war again. This is bad. So I think that it's crucial. It's crucial that we understand how we are going to win the war, and then we make sure that we build the national security concept that ensures that we manage to degrade and keep the goals that we manage to get for the long term. This is the issue. This is the issue.
For sure. Okay, if we can look at the other fronts of this war right now. So, in the meeting between the Prime Minister and President Trump, what do you think those big issues are that they need to really resolve in terms of the coalition, the partnership between the U.S. and Israel outside of Gaza, in terms of Iran, Hezbollah, Russia, China, all of these other issues?
So I think that this is probably one of the most defining meetings ever for Israel. It will shape completely the future of the Middle East, the Israel, and then probably even the globe. Um, and big things are being discussed. Israel is discussing how to win against Hamas. Israel is discussing how to win against Iran and bring down the Shia axis. We're discussing peace agreements, building an alliance with the Sunni moderate states. Um, so these are issues, and we're discussing also the future of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This will shape reality for Israel for generations, like applying sovereignty in the Jordan Valley, in Jewish towns. This is very crucial. So these discussions, some of the things after the discussions are going to be announced. And we hear about that. We'll hear about plans. There are many things that are being discussed, and the public won't get um, the brief of what happened there. Things that are being discussed, strategies that are being built, and we'll see them only as time goes by and not immediately, and they're not going to be announced. So definitely a very defining moment. It's also, of course, defining for looking at the next stage of the hostage deal and bringing back our hostages.
Thank you, General. Now, a good number of our viewers have asked if you're able to comment on these images and the messaging coming out of Hamas, that when they do these hostage returns, they have these ceremonies and they're issuing these certificates and they're having their children run around the streets of Gaza, suggesting that they've won the war. We're curious to know what you make of all of this and how you think, bottom line, this impacts the war itself. Meaning, is this Hamas trying to save face, putting on a facade, or do you think it has real implications in terms of their manpower, their resolve, and their strategy?
Yes, there is a term for this. It's called Pallywood. They are good, they are good at commercials and branding, but it's a facade. It's definitely a facade. Gaza is leveled down. We destroyed most of their capabilities. People are desperate. Many people went back to the north of Gaza. They saw the devastation and went back south. And people are saying we want to leave. And we'll see it in the long term. We'll see, I believe, at least half of the Gazans leaving Gaza completely. And we'll see also at the stage when the IDF will go back to fight, that all of this was really staging, and trying to demoralize Israel. They're good at that. But we have to be resolute, strong. And I say all the time in the last week, we need Zionism and not cynicism. Okay? It's not time for being cynical. It's time to be strong, resolute, and push all the time to victory. And when I speak to the commanders of the army, they want to win and they're not going to give up. The same goes for the government. So we have to distance ourselves from voices that are trying to demoralize us, to say, that's it, we lost, it's over. No, it's not over. We didn't lose. We're winning. We're changing the Middle East. We have at moments successes. We have at moments some setback. This is part of a long war. And imagine in the Second World War, every battle, everybody would have started saying, listen, we lost the battle, we saw so many soldiers were killed. No, you look at the big picture. The big picture, we have to be focused. We have to be focused and understand that we're not going to stop until we win the war. And we are step by step moving towards victory, and it takes time.
And what would you say right now the resolve is of the Israeli people? Every day it seems like you're giving a lecture in multiple cities across Israel. When you meet Israelis from all walks of life, are they still, committed to winning this war, sending their children, sending their spouse to fight? Or do they see the images of Hamas emboldened and they're now becoming depressed and want to end all of it?
Well, I think that Israeli society is very, very resolute. The motivation of the reservists is unbelievable. These guys have done 200, 300 days of service, and the motivation is really, really high. And the more Israel will be resolute in winning the war, the more the motivation will grow. What will break the Israeli society is not winning the war. This is the most dangerous thing. This is not something this society will accept. We want victory. We want to eradicate Hamas. We want security in the long term and not in the short term. And nobody is buying anymore just sayings from politicians. Nobody is buying into ceasefires and some kind of agreements and saying, we won when we didn't. No, we understand the issues, and we understand that we need to really, really work hard to achieve our goals. And the prices will be great. The price will be stability and prosperity for a long, long period of time.
Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you so much for sharing all of this, and thank you for all you are doing in leading Israel to victory. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning in. We will be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.